Okay. Hi, everybody. Um, April 3rd, 2025 meeting of the planning board. I'm Mike Capuano. I'm the chairman of the planning board. With me tonight is our vice chair, Amelia Aboff, our clerk, Jahan Habib, and our members, Lynn Richards, Michael McNeely, and Luke Schuster. We have a quorum for all the agenda items that are going to be before us tonight. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this meeting of the Planning Board is being conducted via remote participation. A video recording of these proceedings will be available on the city's website or by emailing planning board at somervillema.gov. We've got a new one. We will likely be taking testimony on at least one hearing today. So as a reminder to members of the public who are in attendance, if you want to share a comment, which is testimony, state your name, street of residence, and city of residence for the record at the beginning of your testimony. And once again, an announcement, and I'm going to modify the language of the announcement because I disagree with its narrow scope. The planning board has an open seat for an alternate member and is seeking applicants. If you have a background in urban planning, real estate development, architecture, design, other related professions, and or if you have an interest in being involved in the planning board and the planning process in the city, and you have a passion for guiding Somerville's growth, please send a resume and a cover letter to planning@somervillema.gov. We have a number of items on our agenda tonight. We do have greater than 5 items, which is the planning board's agenda cap. And it's my understanding that we have several 5 zoning amendments that we at some point need to make recommendations on from a joint hearing that was held on March 20th for the Summernova district and one for Medford Street map amendment. We also have a number of public hearings, all of which were continued from that March 20th meeting. And that relates to an application at 120 Middlesex Avenue, multiple different applications for 33 Mystic Avenue, and multiple applications for 375 Harold Cohen Way. It is my understanding that the applicant at Harold Cohen Way submitted a response to a staff memo on Monday of this week, which did not make it into the planning board's packet. And it is also my understanding that the planning staff has not yet had an opportunity to review that memorandum to be able to address it and to incorporate it within a supplemental staff memorandum. I equivalently don't think that this application is complete and ready to be heard tonight. Accordingly, it's also the kind of the newest one that has been noticed. So I am inclined to continue this. Well, plus, in addition to that, we have a number of items on our agenda with the zoning amendments and older public hearings. Next meeting, which is the 17th, we have another joint hearing with the Land Use Committee, which will take up a substantial amount of time. But I'm thinking we might be able to get through some serious stuff tonight, and we may be able to take them up in a few weeks. So I don't know if there's a representative from the applicant at Harold Cohen Way if they'd like to. Yes.
This is Steve Carey with PPZ. I see Sarah Rogers has her hand raised. I'll promote Sarah to panelists if that's all right
Okay.
with the chair.
Yes. Hello, Sarah. Yes. Hi. Hello.
Sarah, we can't hear you.
Is this any better?
Yes,
Oh,
we can hear
yes.
you now.
Sorry, this is Sarah Rogers with Federal Realty. We are prepared to present tonight. I do believe our application is complete. I understand there is a full agenda, and if we're not able to get to us, we,
I'm gonna say it's unlikely that we'll be able to get to you this evening based on the comprehensive nature of tonight's agenda. Um, I don't know if staff had been in touch with you earlier today to basically let you know that I don't think we're gonna be able to get to you tonight. I also don't like having a presentation until the staff has had a chance to review and had an opportunity to analyze, to be able to ask and answer questions with the board on the additional material that was submitted. So I think that for the good basically of the planning board's agenda and for your application and our ability to analyze and assess your application, that it's best if we continue this for a couple of weeks.
okay. And then understanding you have another joint hearing on April 17th, what time does that start? Does that give us any time to actually present on 17th?
What I think that might do, it depends on the length of that joint hearing is. The joint hearing will likely begin at 6:30. The planning board's agenda start and meetings start at 6 o'clock. So the likelihood is, presuming we get through kind of everything but you today, which I'm not sure we're going to do. If you're kind of the last item left to go from tonight, which you may or may not be, I'll have you do a presentation at 6 o'clock, so the planning board and the public will be able to at least, see the project. We'll have the joint hearing, which will last as long as that'll last, and potentially take you back up for testimony and things after the joint hearing. The only concern that I have is if the joint hearing runs exceptionally late, which it did a few weeks ago, there might not be anybody left to present testimony because everybody's going to be in bed or eating or putting kids to bed and things like that. So we're just going to have to, I think, play it a little bit by ear,
Okay.
based on the nature of how tonight goes. But that's.
Okay.
I also wish we didn't have joint hearings with quite as many items on it as frequently as we have. That is a discussion that I'm having externally, and my frustration with that, which of course bleeds into all of your hard work and time as well.
Okay. Well, really appreciate it.
Okay,
And
thank you.
hopefully we'll be able to touch base next week or 2 weeks.
I hope so too.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, the chair moves to continue this agenda item to the 17th of April, seconded by Amelia. Steve, can I please have a roll call?
Or Lynn Richards,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
and Michael Capuano.
Unanimous vote. Thank you very much, and I hope to be able to see you in a few weeks. Okay. So we have, with these folks having continued, we have 120 Middlesex Avenue, 33 Mystic Avenue, and 5 zoning recommendations. Based on the timing by which we need to make recommendations to the land use committee, and then they have to act on our recommendation, combined with the fact that we have our own agenda items, combined with the fact that in 2 weeks we're going to have yet another joint hearing that's going to take up potentially a significant period of time. I would like to at least try to get through these zoning amendments and hopefully at least one case. So that I'm going to exercise my discretion as the chairman and take agenda items out of order and take the zoning amendments for discussion and potential recommendation first. With that in mind, I want to remind everybody that the planning board, in instances of zoning amendments, acts as a recommending board to the land use committee. Okay, we are not the voting people. We do not adopt, we do not reject, we do not amend. All we do is recommend. which means that the land use committee takes as much from our recommendations as they elect to. So with that, and the concern that I have is occasionally this board, and boards of previous constituencies too, has really gotten into the weeds and dug in deep and had lengthy, great conversations about specifically what we want to do, and then we pass our recommendation along and it's summarily acknowledged and then disregarded. So I want to make sure that we are all aware of our role in this process when we go forward. So with that in mind, I want to take up the Medford Street application first, which is I think it's 295, 297 Medford Street, which was agenda item 25-0269. I also want to say for the record, I was absent from March 20th, both planning board meeting and joint hearing. I have watched the videos for both the planning board and the joint hearing, and I've submitted the affidavit to the city already. So I'm up to speed and ready to, I'm prepared to take votes. So does anybody have anything they would like to discuss on the 295 to 297 Medford Street application? And as a reminder, this is to change the zoning from MR3 to MR. Yes, Lynn. Lynn, did
Through
you
the
raise your hand?
chair,
Oh, no, you were, I was just finishing your sentence. I was being rude. MR3 to MR4, so 4.
Oh.
I'm so
Uh,
sorry.
No, it's okay. I just want to make, does anybody have anything they would like to address for this application? Any questions, any comments? I see Luke's hand.
In the spirit of brevity, I'm generally supportive of it. I think it's a good place for more housing. Sounds like a smart project.
I will recognize anybody else that would like to address this application at the time. I'll say a few brief things about this. This is now, I think, at least the second time that an applicant at this address has come to the planning board and land use committee seeking to upzone this parcel. The most recent time that I can recall prior to this, we had some fairly substantial pushback from a wide swath of people, including members on the planning board. I don't exactly recall, but I think the proposal was to make this even greater than MR4. It might have been MR5 or something like that. It was, I think it was a quite different project. The nature of this project is, I think, quite different. It was almost, in my experience, fairly unusual, almost unanimous agreement with and support for this application, and that speaks to me. We have an applicant who is proposing to build a project with all affordable units. I don't think that we have had a 100% affordable project that's come before us in quite a long time. So I think that's a positive thing for sure. I don't see any reason why the planning board, or I certainly wouldn't vote to recommend this project for adoption to the land use committee. So, anybody have anything else they'd like to say before we move ahead? Okay. The chair moves to recommend adoption of 25-0269, which is 295 to 297 Medford Street, being upzoned from MR3 to MR4. Seconded by Amelia. Steve, can you please call the roll?
Lynn Richards,
Yes.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
and Michael Capuano.
We have unanimous recommendation for adoption of that agenda item. Next, there are 4 separate votes that I'm going to take up the for Summer Nova amendments for discussion now. I don't know if people want to speak on individual ones or if want to speak generally on the application or the proposed amendments as a whole. Obviously, they do different things. If you want to talk about the use aspects differently than the zoning aspects, we can do that too. However people want to do it. If there's comments, questions, I think I know Steve, you're definitely here and can speak to some of this. I don't know if we have other staff who may want to chime in as well. Sarah's here. I didn't see you. Sorry. Hi. So we have robust staff here ready to talk. So who wants to go? Lynn, I think I saw you.
Before I get into the substance, you just said something that I hadn't read or understood. Are these amendments applicable to all of Somerville or only Supernova or Summer Nova?
Through the chair, if you'd like me to answer that. Hi, Lynn. Mostly it is, so the 2 that are about the uses, the lab amendments and the A space amendments, those are to effectively the city overall. The other 2, the R&D base district and the arts and innovation overlay, only apply to the Seminova area. Does that help?
It doesn't. So I was a geek and actually read through all of these. Sorry. And it's not like I'm looking at it right now and it doesn't put it into a space limited way. So I'm looking at the very first one around the art space, and you're saying that's only for Supernova?
No, the arts space, the arts and
first
creative
bullet.
enterprises is across the entire city,
As is the lab. Okay,
as is the lab. So
Okay.
the other 2 are district specific.
excellent. Thank you, ma'am.
Anybody have any more questions? I see Amelia.
Through Mr. Chair, I wonder if Sarah could expand for us on sort of staff's position on the arts and innovation overlay as it stands in this form. I know that I, for one, was really advocating that we have a staff-led proposal as opposed to a developer-led proposal, and would be curious if there's sort of general sentiment or feedback and context that the department might like to share with us.
Thank you for that. Through the chair, the proposal that went forward was actually a result of a semi-intense, just because we pulled it together in a short order, and had a number of back-to-back meetings over the course of, I think it was a month and a half, 2 months at the end of last year. So this is a combination of a compromise proposal between the city, the development team, and neighborhood representatives. And that the neighborhood representatives included Union Square Neighborhood Council, included a significant population of the arts community, and others who are, sort of immediate abutters. So this was I'm going to call it a negotiated, for lack of a better term, and I am not entirely sure, quite bluntly, that any of us are ecstatic about it for all of the needs that each of the groups might have. But it was done in a public setting to, sort of the best of compromisability.
Thank you so much.
Lynn.
So
And I just want to clarify, Lynn and all, this is more than just question time. This is also, comments and thoughts time too.
oh, this is comments and thoughts time.
Oh,
I
awesome.
I wanted to clarify before I dove into comments. So I actually moved, by way of background, I moved to Somerville in part because I have an artist-based business in my basement. So I actually had looked at the code before I moved here and understood that I was protected. So when this came up, I was nervous. So I'm just saying I have a little bit of background on this. So now you've gotten rid of creative uses, and now I would fall under a home-based business, okay, for my studio in the basement. Except that I can't have any walk-in customers. Walk-in customers are prohibited, right? Absolutely prohibited, which I totally get. But there's one small wrinkle on that, and that Somerville Open Studios app encourages walk-in businesses. So if we pass this and we have Somerville Open Studios, we're, already out of compliance. And so I think that particular sentence needs to be reworked to walk-in customers are prohibited except for like something. I'm not a code writer, but there has to be something there. And when I brought it up to the Somerville Arts Department, they said, oh, it's beloved. There won't be a problem at all. You don't want to put out a new code and have some portion of it already illegal, is my 2 cents. And then the second comment, and so that's on page 43. And then on page, I went through this before, hold on half a second, about the home-based business. The live work unit. So if you do a live work unit, so I live in my place and in the basement I have my studio, that could be considered live work. You're not able to rent out any portion of it. And I think that the way that it was written was you're not able to rent out the studio portion of it, but I do have a roommate that I do rent out a room. I own my condo and I have a studio in the basement. And as I understand from Dan, that particular bit was around, well, we don't, with 6-story apartment buildings, et cetera. But I think the vast majority of the housing stock in Somerville are these old big homes that have multiple configurations. So I would encourage us to send a recommendation to the land use committee to modify those small pieces to ensure that we're not unintentionally making the small home-based arts community illegal. Everything else in it worked for me. I spent quite a bit of time going through this with a fine-tooth comb.
Sarah, can I ask you, in light of Lynn's concerns, how we might propose a recommendation to the land use committee to amend the language to be able to address what she's raising? Because it makes sense. I mean, open studios is a well-known thing. It's a welcoming thing, and it would be silly to it's not as disruptive as like a porch fest or something. It's people going into people's homes and looking at at creations. So let's make sure we don't unwittingly get rid of a really nice feature of the community.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we've discussed, and Steve, help me out here, you might be, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things that we had talked about was adding artist studio to home occupation and home-based business. And that will sort of make sure that I believe that that can happen. Steve, is that what we had discussed? Am I correct on that? I'm seeing Steve nodding, but I don't hear him.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, I was muted. Yes, just clarifying, putting in the word artist, just to clarify that home occupations include artists, and artist studios.
But point two still says then retail sales to walk-in customers are prohibited.
Okay. So that may also need some tweaking. I also would be curious if, and maybe this is like an ISD interpretation of the word customers, and whether the people on the day of open studio would be considered customers in the sense that the zoning ordinance is intending. Either way, I'm sure that is language that can
I
be
mean,
tweaked.
I will have a display board open with smaller pieces that people, bigger pieces, but mostly smaller pieces. And I've done this before in Arlington, Virginia, and you know, these are good things to do. So retail sales, money and objects will pass hands. Like I think it needs to be, you know, you don't want to have a steady stream of customers. So, but kind of for organized events, maybe something along those lines, because you don't want to limit it just to Somerville Open Studios. You don't want to be that prescriptive. So, with the
Right.
exception
Mm.
of organized events, because maybe Porch Fest evolves into, or the state does something, or the region does something. So maybe retail to walk-in customers are prohibited with the exception of organized citywide events or something like that. Sarah's the code genius. She can come up with something really good on that.
Lynn,
And
that's a
then-
really good idea, because I mean, usually we can't, have a, beer out on the street, but occasionally when there are, certain closed street festivals, places can get, 1 day permits to be able to, deviate from what they would otherwise be prohibited from doing. So I think that's a good way to maybe incorporate that. So it's not just open studios. Maybe it's open studios. Maybe it's a, a regional thing. Maybe it's a different event.
Right. An
But
organized event, because again, you don't want to be too prescriptive. But my mom's been an artist, I've been an artist. Neighbors can get knickers in a twist. So, by having it this way, if somebody didn't want this, they could raise issues. And then I think that the issue on page 41 on being able to rent out part, like a room in your place and have a studio, I think it's an issue of a comma. No portion of, or you could say the studio portion of the live work unit may not be rented, or something along those lines. You're not looking to rent out studio space, but if somebody's going to have a roommate, I think that that's fine. Again, getting to the intent of what you're trying to do. Has it already been fixed? See, yeah, it's point D.
Yeah,
Sarah, on page 41, no
yeah,
portion
I just
of
see it.
a live work. So now roommates are disqualified. No portion, the studio portion of a live work unit is not
Mm.
be rented or sold. I think that would solve the issue. And it gets to the intent of what I think you're trying to do. I understand, Michael, that you think these are going to end up in the whatchamacallit, but these are easy fixes that I think make the code better. And you want to develop a code to, as Sarah will tell you, to kind of for long-standing longevity. That was a terrible sentence.
I like long-standing longevity. What do you get? I
a lot
wish
of
to
long.
achieve that. Yeah, and Lynn, just so you know, this is the type of discussion and amendment that I think is going to be helpful. Just
Okay.
because I'm I know that this particular series of amendments were created as Sarah was saying in response to one of Amelia's questions, over a number of years with a number of stakeholders. So it's, you know, it's not perfect for everybody. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how land use committee and the council address some of these somewhat competing interests, but also the fact that this was a fairly collaborative process from everything I've gathered. You know, the fact that it was presented by you know, Tom Galligani and Steve and Dan, and it was like this was an administration presentation, and I really respected that, and I'm curious to see where folks will go with it. I didn't mean to cut you off, Lynn, if you had some more thoughts and comments, but I certainly have some. Yeah, there.
Through you, I was just going to add that a lot of these, the arts and creative enterprise edits came from directly working with the Somerville Arts Council, based on the MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, had worked with us to do a study of the art spaces that were being threatened. And so some of these came out of that, but there's always room for improvement. So we can certainly recommend and make those tweaks.
Thank you.
Yeah, Michael.
So first off, I just want to commend the you know, multi-stakeholder approach to bringing this up to the city. I think the fact that you said that nobody was happy when you left the room and put this together is a good sign, right? That means that everybody compromised. I had one minor element that I keyed in on specifically the 25-0131, the master plan development overlay. I recall that there was a 5% you know, grace window for the green score amongst some other things. And I wanted to kind of just touch on that a little bit and confirm that the intent here is to help the developer kind of work through like ad hoc specifics that may occur as a consequence of other asks around the special permitting process, and that this isn't going to artificially drop the green score requirement by 5% kind of blanket in this development area. Is that generally correct?
Sorry, I lost my mouse there for a second. Through the chair, yes, it is not intended to drop it by 5%. It's to give flexibility, as very often these projects come forward. There's redesigns and tweaks, and so that's the intent.
So what mechanism do we have to protect I guess against that potential abuse? Is it possible for us to reject the special permit if too many applications are all coming with that lower standard requirement? How would you kind of address that?
That's probably something that we will review at the staff level.
Okay.
And work with, that's something that obviously Public Space and Urban Forestry are going to have their finger tightly on the pulse during the review process. So I think before if that happens, it's going to be addressed before it gets to the planning board, I hope.
Awesome. Okay, that's really helpful. Like I said, I appreciate that you want to kind of work around little nuances that'll occur through the process here, but I hope that we weren't going to artificially lower the bar. So this is great. Thank you.
Who else besides me? Yes, Amelia.
I'm not trying to persuade anyone else of my position here, but I'd like to share my thoughts and my position. I see us as the once again, you know, I like to go back to sort of like, what is the purpose of the planning board? What is the, you know, legal entity that is the planning board constituted to do? And my understanding of that is that it is to guide the development of the city in keeping with the city's comprehensive plan. I very much appreciate the collaborative nature in which this sort of has been iterated since the Rafi proposal originally came up. And I appreciate that staff seems at least mildly supportive of the iteration that's in front of us tonight. I won't feel comfortable making a positive recommendation on the overlay district specifically, and I need to think a little bit more on the R&D district one, but I feel like this is still the result of a provocation of a developer who bought up a lot of land in a part of the city that at no point was slated for development of this scale, and is trying to leverage their, agglomeration of large parcels to force the city's hand by, dangling a big economic development carrot. I don't feel like this is, I'm sorry, it's not feeling. This is misaligned with Summer Vision. It is counter to the, community input that was received that informed Summer Vision, although I understand we've had more recent community input and I do appreciate that. And just fundamentally, I don't believe this is how we as a city should be governing the use of land by being responsive to developer provocations. They came in and asked for something giant, and I feel like we've compromised 60% of the way, and that's 60% more than our comprehensive plan called for or directed us to do. I don't hear enthusiasm from the city's side on this. And I don't see the community benefits as being so overwhelming as to justify the community impacts that I think this will bring. I would like to see more of an emphasis on housing. I don't think that, I think a lot of the community support that we heard was about their really strong engagement with the community on a programming level, which is great, but again, is not something that is codified in zoning and not something that we can guarantee will be maintained indefinitely into the future, even if they provide the physical space as in keeping with the agreements here. So from a land use planning perspective, I just don't feel like I can endorse this in the context of what I think the board's sort of baseline remit is. That said, I don't expect that to be a persuasive position to everyone, and not trying to change anyone else's mind. That's just where I think I fall here.
Amelia, I very much appreciate that. And when I give my thoughts, I'm going to share certainly some of what you expressed. But I don't know if you have more thoughts or questions or further suggestions, but I don't want to cut you off.
No, I mean, I support the the language adjustments to the ACE and to the lab uses. I just have concerns about the responsiveness to, an aggressive proposal that nobody asked for. Thank you.
For sure. Jahan, did you want to?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. I also appreciate the Madam Vice Chair's thoughts, and I have been struggling. I've had similar struggles. When it looks like, to me at least, it appears to me that there is a scenario where you do have developers who are in many ways dangling economic benefits to the city of Somerville and its residents on the one hand, and it seems a little excessive to me. I'm still struggling, to formulate the full consideration here, but I do share Madam Vice Chair's concerns as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, of course, and this is maybe particularly fresh in my mind because I was not here live on the 20th and watched the video more recently than you all were in attendance. So my thoughts are as follows. My assessment of where at least the testimony kind of weighed, right? So as an initial matter, I tend to be distrustful of developer-led rezoning, right? which is why it was so. I think the initial plan was withdrawn by Rafi, and this whole new thing kind of came up from whole cloth with substantial engagement from a number of disparate stakeholders and interest groups. So I mean, when you've got the arts community and the neighborhood council and the development community and MAPC coming generally together, I say, okay, and the administration, I say, okay, nothing's perfect. And then I look at where the concerns were, both ones that kind of I identified, some that Amelia also just elucidated, and things that were raised in the public hearing. And I think Senator Jalen had it kind of hit the nail right on the head. Now she also lives in the neighborhood, and this is going to impact her, but she was 100% right. She says when we looked, and I looked at it too, and Amelia and all of you, when you look at Summervision and where we're going to preserve and transform and protect it, this was not in the transform area, right? This was in something substantially less than that. So I immediately say, oh, okay, well, what's going on here? And the neighbors' concerns in that neighborhood, right? So this is obviously, you guys know the area. It's a single story, 2-3 story, buildings surrounded by a residential neighborhood, with a church and somewhat limited access. And the concerns that people had is this is too big, this is too tall for a residential neighborhood. What the heck are we doing? And I share those concerns. I appreciate the presentation that Dan and Steve put forward. I thought that was very helpful in the way that I was looking and thinking about things. The one thing I didn't find quite as helpful was looking at heights by blocks, block 1, block 2, block 3, block 4, and going up to 200 feet on one block and 160 feet on another block. And kind of step backs help, but that doesn't really show me the real impact of what the maximum build out of a series of sites like this will be on those streets, on the neighborhood, and things like that. So I definitely share the concern that this might very well be overbuilt, in light of where it's sited. Now, if I could pick, I'd say pick this whole goddamn thing up and plop it in Innabel. Nobody lives there. Why we didn't do that, I don't really know. But this is what we've got. And we've got, to me, something that at least has, there were very few people that I recall that were diametrically opposed to the whole thing. And I don't think that's what I've heard from you, Amelia, or Jahan either. So I think I start from a positive place.
I would like to characterize my comments as diametrically opposed to the whole thing.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, I miscategorized you. I'm not. I think I start from a position of this is generally supported with serious and real concerns. Being that we are a recommending body to the land use committee, I would like our recommendation, or a recommendation that I would give, is to say, I recognize that this is a collaborative process. I recognize that this is something that generally more people are more in support of than not, based on the testimony that we received, but that there are significant concerns. I think the land use committee also expressed an interest in seeing a rendering of what the heck this thing is actually going to look like built out. So I think that realization and that concern is not lost on anybody. So a recommendation that I am considering is a general recommendation for approval with strong reservations to the height and the scale. I want the land use committee to significantly look at what impact that is going to have on that neighborhood. I feel a little bit uncomfortable voting not to recommend something that had generally broad-based support, and was collaboratively reached over a period of years and a number of hours. If I was the if this was the body actually doing the voting on the amendment and actually crafting law, I would be more along the side of Amelia and say, this isn't good enough. We need to go back. We need to do it again. We need to seriously rethink it. But for the purpose of being a recommending body on something that is generally a good start, I think a recommendation that I would like to make is one that's a good start, really dig into some of the concerns that the neighborhood has raised, that that I have on height, build out, access to different areas of the site. There were a number of people saying that they couldn't access the church, they couldn't access their homes when church was in use, things like that, and that's all seriously concerning. That I think that is something that hopefully can be worked through, by the committee and by the city and by the stakeholders as the process moves forward. So that's kind of where I am on this. Generally supportive, but having some serious concerns about aspects of the various amendments that I think the land use committee and the council generally should take seriously, and that I think they will take and are taking seriously based on my understanding that they've already asked for some of the same things that that I wish we had. So, does anybody want to have any further discussion? Because I'm happy to keep going. Yes, Lynn.
Ann Tate raised a really good point, specifically on the zoning overlay, a particularly good point. And in your recommendation, Michael, I'm wondering if we can ask the land use committee to also look at parking and traffic, because this is a substantial development that is not easily served by any rail, might have some bus. So is there a conversation with MBTA to increase the headways for buses along, I think it's Somerville Avenue? Is there any conversation with the MBTA about extending Union stop to Porter Square, et cetera, et cetera? But just understanding, like, for me, places evolve, and this is a kind of industrial area. This could be really interesting development. However, I do worry about the traffic impacts given the kind of lack of transit that serves the area. So in your recommendations, if they could drill into that a little bit more and understanding what it may look like, what mitigated factors for, now in 10 years, but in 10 years time, there will be XYZ in place, something along those lines.
Yeah, Amelia.
While you're considering items for potential revision, I'll raise the question. I found it disappointing here to see lodging uses included with the residential use, given what I think we've heard is sort of a lot of demand for housing and housing in this area. So if we're questioning specific line items of this, that's one that I would ask if the group has any interest in revisiting. The residential requirement is so de minimis to begin with that occupying it with a hotel feels a little silly.
There's also a hotel right down the street.
There could be another hotel at the end of the street someday, maybe. in 2040.
No, are you kidding me? That's going to be a half-built thing until I'm long in the ground. But yes, I generally agree with Amelia's concerns on that aspect too. And let's yeah, Luke.
Thanks. All really interesting perspectives and back and forth. It's making me have two layers of process thoughts, and I'll try to be quick, and then I'll end with substance on what's actually being proposed. On process, I mean, I feel like this project really triggers for me the frustration that I think, Mike, you were starting with around our role in this recommendation process. This is a big, important decision. And I just feel like we should either treat it that way and make a thoughtful, careful decision, or not. But this middle ground just doesn't feel good. It's like I want to chime in and ask follow-up questions. I've got follow-up questions to things Sarah said about, like, it's kind of intriguing to hear that staff kind of thinks this is a compromise that's maybe necessary, but doesn't love parts of it. And it's like, in which direction do they not love it? And I'm not even directly asking that. It's like, that's where my mind goes. And we're already half an hour into this, which I think is longer than we want to be spending because our recommendation doesn't really matter anyway. So this does feel like a crappy process. So if I can be helpful and productive in thinking about a solution, I don't have one yet, but I kind of feel like in the moment, I just feel like not making any recommendations on these at all, or really doing it for real would be better. But the middle ground just doesn't feel great. The second layer of process comment is, separate from our role in this. My mind spins about just trying to track all the process that has already happened. And I really appreciate Amelia's concerns around how the process doesn't feel like it's gone right on this. I'll just share, even sort of separate from Amelia's, or it's on a tangent from that. It's like there's a negotiation, and I know, Sarah, you were meaning that somewhat informally, but working that the city's done with, civil society groups, but they're not elected, and we're here as an appointed body, and there's a history of Summer Vision, but that's fading into the distance of history a bit, and so people's perspectives might be changing, and how do we factor in that? And it just feels like something's not quite right with the number of different discussions that happen around a project like this. And if I'm feeling confused as a member of the planning board, it must be really confusing for the public to know what's the touch point to really chime in here, and then have the elected officials make the tough decision at the end of the day. And I think the number of different meetings and different touch points with quasi-elected bodies, not all elected bodies, makes the clarity of how to provide input and then hold people accountable for the tough decisions that they're going to make. I think that just all breaks down. And then on substance, all of this just leaves me thinking process matters. If the process just passes our individual threshold of being flawed enough, that is a legitimate reason to vote against something. But I also think we should remember at the very end of the day, is this direction for this neighborhood, ultimately good or bad? And I'll just say, I mostly like what's proposed here. And so on very end of the day substance, I'm pretty supportive. I'll leave it with that.
Yeah, Luke, I'm gonna double up on what you said about process, right? This is exactly what frustrates me too, is in my opinion, the planning board should have been in these meetings for the last 5 years when they were being discussed, in some way or another. So for us to be somewhat of a secondary body here is frustrating. I think goes against the role of what a planning board generally should play. And I think we have started discussions on potentially making our involvement on the ground floor something that we can do and engage in So we don't come into a place of, well, we're seeing this after 5 years of other people's negotiations. So I think that's, I definitely share your frustration there, and you know, I don't want to be in this position, in another 5 years for something else. So I'll leave it at that. But on process wise, I agree with you. It stinks being the guy in the back. Yeah, Amelia.
Briefly, Mr. Chair, on the process soapbox, like I completely agree with both of you, but also like the planning board who is the approving adopting authority for summer vision, which was published in the fall of 2021, and like in which this does not appear. Right, so like to the extent that we are supposed to be being consulted on the overall direction, like that is the touch point I'm going back to of like the last time we were consulted on the overall direction between that and the zoning overhaul. Anyway, that's all.
Anybody else want to weigh in? I know that Amelia has already expressed her, I think, intention not to support a positive recommendation on at least some of the four, and they are 4 votes, and they will be taken separately. However, I think as part of our recommendation, we'll have 4 votes, but I think our recommendation, presuming that it will wind up to be a generally positive recommendation overall, is to incorporate all of the discussion that we had, the concerns that I think we all raised, and things that the land use committee ought to consider if it elects to take up our recommendation. So with that in mind, I think I'm going to go to my cheat sheet here and look at the actual language of the 4 Supernova, something amendments, and go through them one by one. And for the purpose of ease, knowing Amelia's kind of stated lack of general support of where we're at, I'm going to have someone else second these motions. So the first one is requesting ordainment of an amendment to Articles 2, 3 through 6, and 9 of the ordinance to revise the regulations for arts and creative enterprise, office and residential uses, which is item 25-0129. The chair moves to recommend adoption of that proposed ordinance, incorporating all of the discussion planning board has had this evening, seconded by Jahan. Steve, can I please have a roll call?
Lynn Richards,
Yay.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
and Michael Capuano.
Aye. Requesting ordainment of an amendment to Articles 2, 4 through 6, 8, and 9 of the zoning ordinance to revise the regulations for laboratory uses and buildings, which is file number 24-1460. The chair moves to recommend adoption of this ordinance with all of the considerations and suggestions and discussions made by the planning board tonight, seconded by Jahan. Steve, can you please call the roll?
Lynn Richards,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
and Michael Capuano.
Aye. requesting ordainment of an amendment to Articles 6, 9, and 10 of the ordinance to establish a new research and development zoning district, which is file number 25-0128. Chair moves to recommend adoption of this particular proposed amendment with all of the discussions and recommendations made by the board this evening. Second by Jahan. Steve, can you please call the roll?
Lynn Richards,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Amelia Aboff,
No.
and Michael Capuano.
Requesting ordainment of an amendment to Articles 8 and 12 of the ordinance to establish a new arts and innovation sub-area of master plan development overlay district. File number 25-0131. Chair moves to recommend adoption of this proposed amendment with all the discussions and considerations made by the planning board this evening. Seconded by Jahan. Steve, can you please call the roll? Steve?
Oh, apologies, I was muted. Lynn Richards,
Michael, can I ask you one clarifying question before I vote?
Mhm.
So we are recommending the overlay district. And in the event that a building or buildings that require special permit come through, we will have an opportunity to weigh in on the actual specific development. Correct?
Yes.
This is just setting in place the zoning, but we will have another bite at the apple at some point when we look at the specific proposals that can be built under this zoning.
Yeah, Sarah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I can clarify, there will actually be more than one. So once the zoning gets approved, this zoning is written so that a master plan has to be submitted as the first step. And so that will be a public process unto itself. Only then, when the master plan is approved, can the individual buildings come forward for review and approval at that level. So there's essentially 2 more rounds.
Very helpful. Thank you both, and thank you for letting me ask my clarifying question. I'm ready to vote now. And
It's important that you know exactly what it is that you're voting on.
Yes, thank you. Yay.
great. So next up, Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Amelia Aboff,
No.
and Michael Capuano.
So of the first 2 were unanimous support. The second 2 were 4 votes in support, 1 vote in opposition. We have
Point of
Recommend-
clarification, sorry, through the chair. I was 5 votes in support and one opposed.
Thank you. Math was never my strong suit. We have recommendations on all of the items that came before the joint hearing on 320. I want to thank everybody for a discussion that I think was helpful and one that I hope will be more effective in amendments going forward, as I think we've all expressed in different ways. Did I see that Luke has? Okay, because I know
I'm here still. Yeah.
Okay, good. I know at some point you're gonna have to take a brief leave. I wasn't sure if this was it. So
Yeah. No, thanks.
okay. All right. We have 2 addresses seeking various permits. I'm gonna take up 120 Middlesex Avenue first. Now, this is an application that was already opened and read into the record by Jahan a few weeks ago, so that doesn't need to occur again. So I'm wondering if the applicant and the applicant's team unmute and be elevated to presenters and share their screen and all that good stuff.
This is Steve Carey with PPZ. I just promoted Anthony Galuccio to panelist. Anthony, if you could just confirm who else you've got. I see Matthew Pierce with their hand raised.
Yep. Thank you, Stephen. And good evening, Honorable Chair and members. Nicole Labossiere, who's Senior Director of Development, Matt Pierce, Jeff Kim, Co-Counsel Darren Baird, and Yarini Sanchez from Goulston. And then we have Laura Castelli from VHB, Paula Thompson, and Sean Sanger, who may participate. Did you get that, Stephen?
Yes, I did through the chair. I believe I'm also just waiting on. I don't see Ureni with their hand raised yet. But now I do. And also see a Paula Thompson. Is that party with you as well?
Correct. And Sean
Okay.
Sanger, if these are potential, so it's not critical.
Great. I believe that is everyone.
Great. We can just go back to the previous slide and go to the cover, please. There you go. Thanks. And just good evening. Sorry you have to see me again, but it's good to see you. It was actually good kicking back and watching you work. Well, I didn't have to do anything. And I want to say hi to Sarah, who's I'm psyched that she's here because she's been a big part of the project. So glad to see Sarah Lewis. As you can see, we have
Anthony, can I interrupt you?
Go ahead. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
For the purpose of the benefit of the record, please introduce yourself.
I'm sorry.
That's
Anthony,
okay. We know you.
Anthony Galuccio, partner with Galuccio and Watson, legal counsel for Divco West, and I'm joined by Darren Baird and Yarini Sanchez as co-counsel. As is stated, this is a major amendment of a previously approved master plan special permit, which Divco purchased from Capitol Hall. There are three components to the major amendment, which we will go through this evening, and we've had a very good, long but very good experience with staff, and we think, as the memo illustrates, there's comfort and support for this concept. So we'll go to the next slide. I love this rendering because I think it's illustrative of how this life science building sort of frames the what I call the research district for Assembly Square. You all know the courthouse. It's exciting because this life science opportunity becomes sort of the first life science project coming down Middlesex. It also offers the opportunity for a double-loaded corridor as you come down Middlesex. I know the board is very familiar with the adjacent parcels, which you just approved. So if you remember, and this site actually fronts Middlesex, and then 23 and 20 are adjacent. I'll let Matt get more into the design, which we think is awesome later on. Next slide. This just gives a high level of economic benefits of the project. We obviously we're complying with the codified linkage payments, but the project was approved with an economic development package that we were asked to comply with, which despite changes in the economy, we're happy to do so. Also, just to note, as you probably remember back then, there was not a push for civic space, and folks were really focused on development. So we went and got supported by staff a civic space variance, where we made a commitment to pay $5,200,000 for acquisition for open space. That variance is still going. The total contribution of non-taxable benefits is about $21 million. And then estimated taxes annually are about 9 million. And just in building permit fees, the project would generate about $10 million. So pretty excited about that. Next slide. This just gives a high-level permitting sort of timeline. We began talking to staff back in July. A lot of those conversations we were hopeful that these were de minimis changes, but Sarah reeled us in and made it clear that she wanted us to go through the major amendment process. First around height, which I will explain, and then around a loading change, which Nicole will get into in more detail when she talks about circulation. And then we made other changes, one of which is an amendment also to where parking would egress, which was requested by staff to improve the condition along Cummings. So we'll get into that. I would say about halfway through the process, staff became really interested in Cummings Street, which you folks are now familiar with, and making Cummings less vehicular. So we were asked to do design changes and make a substantial change to where we egressed parking to help participate in that work around Cummings, and we were happy to do that. That took significant time, and then we've been continuing the process with staff and city departments to bring us to this point. We're really excited to finally be able to present this to the board and this opportunity, and we look forward to getting through this so that we can get on to site plan approval. Next slide. I want to just explain the height. It's a little complicated, and some of this involves my conjecture, but it seems like the previous applicant hadn't contemplated what we think was required rooftop mechanical for a life science building. Renderings are a little confusing in that respect. Also, as the board knows, rooftop mechanical needs for life sciences have increased just in terms of sustainability measures and how these buildings are laid out. But what we did to sort of respond to that is we reduced the zoning height of the building. As you know, rooftops are not part of zoning height. But the top of the penthouse mechanical in the proposed is still higher than what was originally proposed. And I'll get into that when we show shadow studies. But so we lowered the zoning height, but the top of the rooftop mechanical is slightly higher, and planning staff wanted to make sure there was total transparency around that. So we were happy to go through the major amendment process. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Nicole to just go over high level the whole building project and what you see tonight. So I want to introduce Nicole Labossiere at this time.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you to the board for hearing us tonight. We're excited to refamiliarize you with this life science development that we've been cooperatively coordinating with the city since we acquired its original permits in 2021. You'll see the building's attributes make for a beautiful, while highly functional Class A life science facility that's consistent with the Mystics and Assembly neighborhood plan. The LEED Platinum certifiable building with 19 floors, a total of 596,000 gross floor area, accommodating commercial, lab, and office floor plates of 35,000 GFA, and 520 underground parking spaces, reduced from its original permitted 629, will anchor 120 Middlesex at this life science development area as the assembly gateway to world-class life science tenants. Next. As Anthony previously went through in his timeline, we've been working closely with city staff on this amendment from initial building height only to building height and loading dock relocation to most recently a request from Sarah Lewis in February of 2024 to help realize the city's vision for a pedestrianized Cummings Street, which is the sketch shown here on the slide. We were happy to assist, even if it meant adding another 5 months to an already lengthy process and realizing additional budget overages required to keep multiple resources engaged. Next. Here you can see a visual chronological progression of our major amendment. On the left, our previous design from 2022, addressing the location of our loading dock at the North Service Drive, separated from the parking entrance to the south. The purple arrow depicts truck traffic into the North Service Drive within the property confines from Middlesex Ave, while the blue arrow shows parking garage from Cummings Street. In the middle is a reoriented blow up of the city sketched with proposed changes to our building to accommodate a pedestrian priority Cummings Street. We were able to accommodate the city's proposal by making changes to our established design as shown in our current proposed plan here on the right. In doing so, we relocated the parking garage entrance from the Cummings Street frontage to the North Service Drive, reducing our loading capacity. We reconfigured the shape of the building by chamfering its southwest corner in order to create a line of sight for those on Middlesex Ave looking west. We relocated lab equipment from the southeast corner to create what we refer to as the triangle, shown in the green circle on the plan. This triangle will be landscaped as part of the site plan approval process and in ongoing coordination with city staff and adjacent landowners. Ultimately, the triangle will be granted as a permanent easement in favor of the public subject to final as-built surveying. Next. So this side-by-side loading access plan comparison addresses both our original proposed loading dock location and city proposed parking relocation. On the left, the original master plan included plans for loading docks and garage entrances located off of Cummings Street. Our original relocation of the loading dock from the west facade of the building to the north was due to the original loading area location being unsuitable for large delivery trucks required for laboratory operations. Because of the narrowness of Cummings Street and the required truck turning radius, this location also lent itself to increased risk of conflicts between trucks, pedestrians, and cyclists at the intersections. With the move of both the loading and the garage entrances to our northern private drive within the property confines off of Middlesex Ave, these conflicts have been eliminated. Previous impacts are now internal to the site and not on Middlesex Ave. Traffic flow on Middlesex will not be affected, and the TIS prepared did not show substantive impacts caused by the project on other intersections along Middlesex. These moves now accommodate the city's vision for a Cummings Street with strong bicycle and pedestrian connections. And now I'm going to turn it over to Matt Pierce of Perkins & Will Architects to walk you through the proposed building design and site plan. Matt?
Thanks, Nicole. Hello, good evening. I'm Matt Pierce from Perkins & Will, and I will walk you through the design of the project. Very excited to introduce you what will be a new northern gateway to this developing life science neighborhood, and what will become a workplace that will further invigorate the larger mixed-use assembly district. The project will bring improvements to the Middlesex streetscape for pedestrians and cyclists, continuing the complete streets approach that has been implemented at 74 Middlesex. A few notable features of the project that you can see in this view. There are exterior balconies, which are on both the north side, this is the north side in the view, and also the south end of the building. And they introduce a human scale to the building, which will also offer tenants great views to the north, to the river, and to the Boston skyline to the south. We've also made an effort to integrate elements of the mechanical system into the facade design to reduce the visual impact and scale of these elements. Next slide. This is a view of the south end of the building, looking north on Middlesex. And at Middlesex and Cummings, we have an oblique angle as we turn the corner. And the facade of the building gently sweeps around this corner in one fluid gesture. As I noted, the south side also has balconies, and those will have great views to the south of the Boston skyline. I will also note that the building has a two-story mechanical penthouse that is stepped back and also has the lower of the two penthouse levels, has the metal and glass facade of the lab and office floors pulled up over that first penthouse as a means of reducing the visual impact of the perceived scale of the mechanical units on top of the building. And of course, the streetscape of Middlesex will be improved and continue the features that have been constructed 2 parcels south at 74 Middlesex. And we'll show those in greater detail when we get to the landscape plan. Next view. In this view, in the foreground is 74 Middlesex on I-93 headed north here. 74 Middlesex, which is constructed now in the foreground on the right. And 120 Middlesex is at the center of the frame, set back a little bit further from the highway. And the La Quinta Hotel is on the left to orient yourselves. Next slide. So this is a combined ground floor and landscape plan. And in this drawing, north is on the left side of the drawing, and that's where the courthouse is located. And the ground floor is composed of active uses along both the Middlesex and Cummings facades. The blue area indicated are all active use spaces with a high degree of transparency. And there's also a sidewalk seating zone just outside the glass storefront on Middlesex Avenue. Near the center of the facade on the Middlesex side is the public entry, and that leads to both the active use spaces and to the tenant elevators. So everything blue in this diagram is publicly accessible, and the only point of security that the public can't pass is at the turnstiles leading directly into the elevators, which are in the gray zone sort of in the center. And there's also an entry to the tenant bike room, which is in the bottom right, and that's the area of the corner, the adjustment to the corner of the building that Nicole described earlier in collaboration with the city. The streetscape has been discussed at great length with the city to align with their vision for a complete street design. And again, that will extend the same features implemented at 74 Middlesex, and we'll really start to piece together an improved streetscape experience on Middlesex. Those components of the street, if we start from Middlesex and work our way in towards the building, we have the drive lane, then we have a parallel parking zone, and also a drop-off area subtracted from that parking zone in front of the entry. So there's a place where vehicles, people dropping off, whether they're Uber or coworkers, can pull out of the flow of traffic and not obstruct traffic. After that parallel parking area comes a permeable median strip, which also creates a safe separation between the parking and the separated bike lane. And then inboard of the bike lane comes a zone with bench planters. Those have canopy trees within them. There are also the street lights and bike parking, short-term bike parking. Then we have an unobstructed walking zone that continues completely from north to south across the front of the building. And then inboard of that is the seating zone against the facade of the building. So altogether, this is a very layered, pedestrian-friendly streetscape and will be a huge improvement to the experience that one has today on this block. As we turn the corner onto Cummings, we have the squared off intersection that Nicole described earlier to improve safety in that area. And we also have, currently, we've shown the blue bike station on Cummings, and we know that the city would like us to look at relocating that to Middlesex, which we're in the process of doing. And the Cummings streetscape also has flowering trees and planters, and also additional short-term bike parking, and at the bottom right, leading towards the tenant bike room entry. And again, this is down in the bike room in the bottom right corner. That is the corner that we have adjusted to the design of the building to improve the sight lines, as Nicole described earlier. On the west side of the property, which is the bottom of the page, is a planting area that abuts the neighboring property, featuring low planting and trees. And at the north side is the combined loading and parking garage entry. As you know, this was a great area of great focus, working with the city to minimize the number and width of curb cuts, to minimize vehicular and pedestrian conflicts, and also to maintain the continuity of the street wall on Middlesex Avenue. So there is one point of entry from Middlesex for both cars and trucks, and the on-site loading zone includes space for trucks to turn around and maneuver, so they do not need to stop and back up on Middlesex Avenue and impact traffic. We go to the next slide. This is an elevation of the Middlesex streetscape. So you're looking west in this view at the east side of the building. And really, I think you can see in this view the layering from the street to the building, which is full of planting and those canopy trees and benches, as well as the understory planting. And in collaboration in the process with the city, we also developed a 2-story expression of the base of the building, which we think is well proportioned to both the height of the building and also to the scale of Middlesex Avenue. Next slide. And this is a detail of the pedestrians experience walking along Middlesex Avenue, where you can see that 2-story expression, but also the ground floor facing Middlesex Avenue is actually recessed. And that creates a nicely scaled seating zone that's covered adjacent to the building, which offers the potential for commercial space that or other active use spaces that could have doors in this area and spill out into the sidewalk zone without disrupting the continuity of pedestrian traffic in the walking zone. Next slide. And this is the last view. This is the entry to the building. And we think it is, with that 2-story expression, it's very grand and easily identifiable. It's very transparent and framed by the diagonal braces, which are a integral feature of the structure of the building. And we use those as expressive elements to highlight the building entry. And now I'll pass it back to Anthony.
Thanks,
Can I
Matt.
just before we continue,
ahead.
can I just ask a question? But I like the idea of the triangle space that you were talking about that feeds into more of a not fully pedestrianized, but a pedestrian focused Cummings Street. Do you have a rendering of what that space looks like from the ground floor, like you were just showing from Middlesex?
We don't have a rendering or a perspective view of that. I think the intention is that to first establish that corridor, the easement that Nicole was describing, and then further to work with the city on the character, the nature of the actual kind of pedestrian way there.
Yes, I will add that we've specifically agreed to continue through the site plan approval process to work with the city and the neighboring landowners to fully realize that through design.
Okay, I have a couple of comments that I'll reserve till later on some of my questions and thoughts, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Should I continue? Oh, thank you. Wanted to, given the board's interest in shadows from my previous experience, wanted to just get out ahead of this and be transparent about the shadow impacts. As we normally do, we show the spring equinox first. The pink is the slight difference in shadow from the rooftop mechanical increase. I'll call it that. So that was also really important that we show that. So this is 9 a.m. In spring. Before 10 o'clock, it's off the neighborhood completely. Go to the summer. There's no impact at all on 10 Hills. Fall, little less than the spring. Again, it moves off the edge of the 10 Hills quickly. And Mr. Chair, this is an ode to you because you asked why we stopped the shadow on the last time I was before you. As you know, winter's very gloomy, so this is the longest shadow impact. By 11:20, it is off the 10 Hills neighborhood, but at 9 a.m. it runs right across the bottom part of the 10 Hills. Next slide. We wanted a high level, just show all the conditions, commitments that run, some of which from the original master plan special permit approval, others that came up during the major amendment. Obviously, we're pleased to comply with all of them. They range from blue bike to sustainability commitments. Worked with staff around Middlesex Ave and pathways there. We have no disconnect on any of that. I want to thank staff for working with us on 18, which is around the multi-use path. The one remaining issue is the parking ratio. If you go to the next slide, I just focus on this. We did, as I said, we reduced the zoning height. We also reduced the approved parking spaces, which were originally approved at a 1.06 ratio at 629. We volunteered a reduction there. We thought it was important to a 0.87 at 520. And as the staff memo was, I thought, very, very good, it did call out a request that we consider a 0.70. We think it's really important that we produce a viable, marketable lab product. And so we do think it's important to be at that ratio, which we thought was a compromise, but we wanted to recognize staff's position in that. And Mr. Chair, that concludes the presentation. Look forward to comments and questions.
Thank you very much for the team and your presentation. I will have some comments and questions a little bit later, as I'm sure my fellow members will. But because this is a public hearing, before I kind of weigh in, and I think everybody else, unless there's something super pressing, I'd like to open up public testimony first. There are a lot of very small boxes of heads on my screen right now, so I'm trying to identify who are my members and who's the team and who might need to speak. So excuse me if I'm kind of squinting here. If anybody on the planning board has anything that they want to ask or say before I open it up to testimony, just unmute.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Amelia.
Just want to give my usual disclaimer that I'm working with Attorney Baird on another matter, and I don't feel it's a conflict here. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else before I open it up to testimony? Okay. What I'm going to do now is open up this public hearing for oral testimony. And take you in the order in which I see you. If you can exercise your raised hand button, I will call on you. If you can, again, introduce yourself by your name, street, and city of residence before you start. Anybody that wants to speak in support of the application. So, seeing Wig Zamor.
This is Steve Carey. Mr. Zamor, you've been unmuted on our end. I believe you have to just unmute on your end.
Hi, thanks very much. I live at Highland Avenue, the Boston end. I think this is a great improvement, especially impressed by the change in the access and the street. Using just one street for access, it really changes this project a lot. And the rest of the drawings look nice to me. I hope you have some great views of downtown Boston, even though you're not showing decks on that side. And I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Wig. It's good to hear from you again. Anybody else who wants to testify in support of the application? Going once. Going twice. Oh, I see Tori Anthony outside. So if Tori can please be unmuted.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tori Antonino. I live at 65 Boston Street. I am in favor of this project, and I do have concerns, and that's in general. I'm so skeptical of taking payment in lieu. I believe this has already been agreed upon, but I need to voice my concerns anyway. Unless we have a targeted plan or targeted place where we are acquiring our civic space and our green spaces, I do not think we should be taking payment in lieu, because we are losing space. And once our space is gone, it's gone. It does not matter how much we have in our open space acquisition fund. So I hope that Sarah Lewis and the other planners have a place to put this $5 million+ I was just going over the Assembly Square plan, and I'm just still seeing how this fits in. And the general concern there is, of course, I believe, like, have we passed the Assembly Square plan? Are we just kind of, going forward with these individual lots? It's just another concern. Final concern is just like, I just want to make sure this is complying with our green roof ordinance, which is in the green, our green score. It includes commercial buildings, and we can have green roofs on our commercial buildings. And of course, just please use native plants, skip the catmint, put in some blue vervain, some echinacea, and some ironweed. And please, 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 we need pussy willow. It's a very important springtime plant for our pollinators. So those are my suggestions and preferences. Thank you very much.
Sorry. Anybody else that would like to speak in support of the application, please raise your hand. I see Jane Bestor.
I would like to first underscore the importance of the previous
Can I
speaker.
just ask you to please introduce yourself before?
Sorry, my name is Jane Bestor, and I live on Ibbotson Street in Somerville. And I've long been interested in development at Assembly Square. And I wanted to underscore the issue raised about open space and, on this site in relationship to, the problem in the city as a whole, and particularly at Assembly Square. That's one thing. Another is I want to strongly endorse the planning board's concern to minimize parking, to try to get it at, I think the figure was 0.70 cars per person. And I think that the Mass General Brigham experience is very instructive, and perhaps Wig will tell me that the analogy is unfounded, but Mass General Brigham thought that it needed a very large parking garage. And in fact, the great majority of people who use that building actually do come on the T. And we all know that Americans need a lot more exercise. And it's really not a stretch to expect people to walk from the T to your building. And the city has worked very hard on the landscaping of the area, and it could be a pleasant, reflective walk. So I really cannot emphasize the parking issue enough. And then finally, this is just, again, and Wig can tell me whether or not I'm misplaced, but you have a balcony at an area, balconies in an area that really is very close to roadways with a great deal of vehicle traffic. And I'm wondering about your, are people actually expected to go out onto the balconies? And I'd like to know more about your concerns about air quality. And finally, what have the neighbors had to say about, I think it's great that this that a building with this type of use is going on the site, but how have the neighbors responded about that immensely long shadow in winter when everybody's spirits are down anyway about gloom and darkness? I'm really curious about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that'd like to testify in support of the application, please raise your hand. Going once.
Hey.
Going twice.
Ooh.
Is Tori going? Going once, going twice. And we'll close that portion of the public hearing and open up to anybody that wants to speak in opposition to the application or otherwise express concern about the application. Please raise your hand. Once, twice. Seeing none, I'll close that portion of the public hearing and open it up to questions and discussion by members of the planning board. I have some, but I'd like to hear what you all think as well. So who'd like to weigh in? Again, I have about 15 people's heads, very small on my computer, so it's tough to see who wants to speak. Just talk. Anybody? Yep, Lynn.
Thanks, Mike. Through you, and I'm sure that this is going to be done, but on the last page of the staff memo, the point 18 was around the multi-use plan. And what I would like to have added is that, they're building a multi-use plan, multi-use path. And we heard about it tonight, but if we could have clarification that'll have connectivity to the other multi-use paths that are being built there. So it's just not this great path right in front of the building, but it connects to other surrounding paths. As we know, we have heard a number of different proposals for this area. So I want to make sure that we're being very explicit that these paths are going to connect with one another.
Sarah, did you want to say something?
Through the chair, yes, I can. Yeah, this group has been exceptionally, as you saw in their presentation, cooperative with many divisions in OSPCD. We've had multiple meetings with Public Space and Urban Forestry and the Mobility Division to determine what Cummings could be and what the cross section is. So I will look at what we can do for condition changes, but given the fact that we are in this in-between spot right now, so they do coordinate with the intent of the new neighborhood plan. But as that is not adopted, I'm not sure I can actually add that condition language. So let me investigate what we can do there.
All right, excellent. Thank you. And it seems obvious, but we also, all of us, I'm sure, have, walked on a building, a great new sidewalk, and then at the property line, it ends and you're back into, never ever land. And so let's make sure that we've got some pedestrian connectivity in this area. Excellent. Thank you, Sarah.
Excellent. Who else? Michael.
You got me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I did, yep.
I want to echo Member Richards' comments as well. I think connectivity was definitely one of my bullets to discuss tonight. So thank you for hitting on that. The next one is also probably not a surprising one for me to bring up, which is the parking ratio. So appreciate you guys bringing that to the forefront in your presentation. Can you just better help me understand what your position is on staff's recommendation to decrease it to 0.7? Is that something you're on board with, or do you have some concerns there?
Thanks, Michael. First, I'll give you my spin, which is we have a previously approved master plan special permit with, I think it's 106 or 109 spaces. And we had a loading condition that the previous applicant hadn't considered life science vehicles getting in and out, just like small trucks. So we had to deal with that realistic change. It wasn't a real change to the substantive change to the design, but it was important to be able to deliver. And the other was that weird height condition where we just don't think they actually rendered what would have been needed for rooftop. So that's my precursor to, we're hoping there's some deference given to the fact that the existing special permit allows for more parking than we're asking for, and we've reduced the parking that we're requesting voluntarily. But it's very difficult for Divco, given the investment they've made, the process to date, the changes that we've made, the cost of those changes, to not want to hold on to what we think is going to be necessary to be competitive in the lab market. You've heard this before. I'm happy to let Laura also weigh in from VHB. I think that's important, but we're not comfortable with what staff has asked for, to be clear. We are comfortable with a reduction of what is in the existing special permit.
Hi, I'm Laura Castelli with VHB. I'll just add from a technical perspective, we took a pretty deep dive at a couple of different things. One, looking at competitive space kind of in the surrounding cities, and we feel like with the parking ratio of 0.87, we're competitive with other robust lab markets. And then the other, flipping the parking ratio conversation to mode share, because we want to reduce mode share as much as we can. We want as few people driving either, especially in single occupant vehicles, but also in carpool vehicles to the site on a daily basis. So when you think about a 0.87 parking ratio for this building, that's a 34% mode share. So that means 34% of the people are driving, and there is a robust transit number and walking number in the balance of that calculation. When we start to go down in mode share, and down in parking ratio, 0.7 brings you at about 26% of the people driving. And I think that, in this climate, also being competitive in the lab market with the transit opportunities that serve this area, it is very difficult and very challenging to get the mode share to be that low and still have a competitive market in the marketplace.
Mr. Chair, can I add just one thing? And I'm on, as you may know, I was Switzerland on Cummings becoming a one-way. I had a previous applicant who was not hugely receptive to that, but then went along with it. But staff now has acquiescence from the adjacent property owner to make Cummings a one-way. The one thing I would say is if that happens, I think that the mobility's concerns about Middlesex getting highly trafficked is less likely, because those other buildings would come all the way out around to the back and not empty out onto the frontage of Middlesex. So this project is the only one that would really come out onto Middlesex at that point, because as you know, it's complicated, but the other egress is along the back and along. So I did want to give credit to Mobility for requesting that, and I think if that happens, there is some relief for that. And thanks, Laura.
Michael, do you have any more questions or comments? Or are you good?
No, I'm good for now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Anybody else? Jahan?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I just want to commend the applicant for both their presentation as well as working with the Somerville planning staff. Certainly appreciate all the efforts there. I do have two questions for the applicant. The first question is around the retail space. I know the location of the street-facing retail space has shifted. I would like to better understand what the vision is for that space. I'm thinking of, with all the planned development or projects that are going on in the vicinity. Would love to hear from the applicant on that. So that's the first question. And then the second question is more around the lab space. And I know that the original application was some years back, and just trying to assess the economic conditions and whether there's any nuances or concerns that we should also consider as a board.
And I think I'm going to let Nicole speak a little bit. We certainly have some ideas about the active use space. It is a ways out. If you can already imagine how much sort of retail consultants' opinions of what will work has changed just in the last 3 years. So we're reserve a little bit, but we do have some ideas. I'll let Nicole speak to it. I think I would just speak broadly for, Darren is also out there. I think the thinking is that now's a good time to do things like this, to get entitled and get ready to go. And we all pray that interest rates change. We still think this area is going to be driven by life sciences, and we think this area will still have a competitive advantage. I mean, area regionally. But yeah, I mean, a full reset to sort of the glory days is probably not around the corner, but we want to work together to make Assembly a premier life science location. And I think with the different investors and developers you have, I think you stand well to be able to put yourself in that competitive advantage. But the site plan approval, is probably, I don't know. I'm not going to speak to some of it is process oriented. It's probably, I don't want Divco to kill me because I'm going to have to build them, but 10 to 12 months. And, the permitting will take time, and I think positioning it, but we're still optimistic that life sciences in this area is going to be competitive. There will be more competition, as you know, with other life science locations, which is one of the reasons that parking becomes more contentious, because you're trying to elevate your competitive advantage against a Watertown or a Cambridge or even a Waltham. And that's why folks try to hold on to that. You want to produce an awesome building that allows for the amount of square footage and the things that we know life science companies want to deliver, but then we also want to make sure their employees are comfortable, and we're not on top of the T in this location. It's a little bit of a walk, but we love Assembly. Nicole, do you want to jump in on both of those?
Yeah, sure. I'll start with the second question first and just piggyback right off of Anthony. But yes, we've been, very fortunate to have worked with the city to get to where we are over the past couple of years, and working in close coordination. So we are super excited to bring this building to life when things turn for the better. And so the sooner we can get this all entitled and ready to go, we will be there. So we appreciate the continued efforts to move forward with the permitting process. In terms of the retail, Jeff, I don't know if you still have presentation capabilities, but if we go back to yes, there we go, to the landscape plan, you'll see the active space, all of the active space uses in blue here. And if we start down on the southern side of the building, which is that facade along Cummings Street, we actually are contemplating a fitness use that will be open to the public. So fitness, then going out into the main lobby proper with perhaps like a juice bar type of appendage that is also open to the public, kind of activating even more that casual collaboration area up there off of the main entry and main lobby proper. Then more towards the left of the page into the longer, narrower active use, we're thinking cafe off of the main lobby. Cafe could even turn into test kitchen type opportunities. So those are the types of uses that we've been honing in on to date. But obviously, as everyone said, as the development grows more with adjacent properties and such, we can see any other needs that may not be met in the area and be open to morphing those, but most definitely just to activate those facades and really let the public in and enjoy those uses as well.
Great. So I just want to thank the applicant team for the response. I think I recognize that the use may vary, and I think it's it's really important to keep the considerations in mind for the Assembly Square area with all the development activity that this board has seen, as well as what may be proposed in the future in mind. So I do appreciate that, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Of course. Who else? Anybody else besides me? Okay, I can go. So yeah, I want to thank all of you for a very good presentation, and it's clear. And Sarah Lewis was, right. It is very obvious that you were, collaborative with staff and making certain changes. I think this building looks great. It looks better than it did before. I have kind of two thoughts and a couple of questions. My first question and thought kind of centers around, similar to what Jahan was talking about, some of the activated outdoor uses and retail space. How do we intend to use you? How do we collectively, the city and you as the applicant, like, intend for that triangle point to be used? Because I don't, it seems like a really interesting space, and I don't want it to kind of go wasted as just kind of a sidewalk with a couple of planters on it. Like, how big are we talking? Because I'm thinking about some of what we did in Union Square on Prospect Street with a really activated sidewalk with some seating areas. That I have no idea if this is going to be big enough for something like that. But if we're looking at making Cummings Street much more non-vehicular activated, I'm wondering if there's a concept that people have on how some of this, get a bigger triangle space could be used.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'm probably the right person to answer that question. So basically what you're looking at now is almost a holding spot. So as this team and the Cummings team are working with public space and urban forestry, the open space and the 12-foot shared path will be designed in unison. And so mobility and public space and urban forestry are working on that piece. So it won't just be a plaza, it will be a continuous flow through connection. The other thing I wanted to say sort of as well is, while this team did originally do the fee in lieu for civic space, and that was because of its proximity to the highway and the fine particulate pollution. Since with the redesign, I don't know what the exact percentages are, but obviously now they actually do have civic space on site because they have been working with us to get that shared use path and accommodate the triangle piece of the civic space. I was trying to see if we had a sketch of sort of both projects together, and I did not find one, but the intent is that they are essentially appear as united in the pedestrian realm.
That's great to hear, Sarah, because I fully recognize that proximity to the highway and all that stuff does impact how a site is used and how this site will be used. Yeah, I just don't like the idea of, and it doesn't sound like this is going to be the case at all, having a kind of a dead corner. So I think everybody's well on their way to making sure this is going to be as welcoming and user friendly as we can make it. And it's a good process. It's something that I had on my mind. The other one I want to raise is one that both the applicant and Michael raised is the parking situation on this particular project. And I'm going to give you guys the kind of the latitude that I think you were looking for. Is we gave you a permit, we gave this particular site a permit 4 years ago, giving 600 and some odd spaces, knowing fully well, and the city did, and we did, and your applicant at that time knew what was generally going to happen in this area of Union Square at some point. The T was already here. We already had a lot of build out. We already had permits for some adjacent properties. We already knew something's probably going to happen with the Assembly Square Marketplace. This is all thought of at the time. Nothing's changed. Nothing fundamental has changed. And so you'd come back to us now, I think in a really good faith effort to say we can reduce it even further to, with 520, so which is more than 100 spaces fewer than what we gave you only a few years ago, and what mobility was fine with 4 years ago. So I'm not willing to say we need to squeeze even more out of you, because nothing's really changed in the last 4 years that would really mandate this. We don't have, just like the project that was next door a few weeks ago, we don't have a regional parking plan yet. The Assembly Square neighborhood plan is something that I know we're going to be discussing and looking to adopt in the next couple of weeks, but it's not there yet. This site is not, it's something actually I think Lynn raised when we were talking about the neighboring property. It's not super close to the T. It's still going to be further walk than something like a Mass General. And access to this particular property is more likely going to have cars than some other areas of Assembly. So with all that kind of in mind, looking at this both as an individual application, as well as the exact things that we discussed a few weeks ago for property next door, I'm satisfied with the 520 that you guys have proposed. You've already come down, like I said, 109. I think that's great. You know what's best to market your building in the site that it's in, and you've worked so well with us in other regards that I don't, as one member, feel compelled to squeeze you a little bit more when we don't have a broader plan in place. If we did, we might be having a different conversation, but right now I have to look at this somewhat in a vacuum, which I don't love to do, but that's the position that we're in right now. So I'm pretty satisfied with everything you all have proposed. And that's where I am. I want to thank you all for your application. Yes, I see Michael.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to jump on your comments there. So for what it's worth, I 100% agree with you that this was a previously approved project and they are coming to us with a concession. And so I'm supportive of this proposal as is. Just since we're talking meta a little bit here, I don't think that some of your other comments are that I necessarily align with. If this were a fresh proposal, I think I'd be a little bit more concerned about the ratio. But again, in terms of this kind of being an update to something that was previously approved, I think everything else about this project is great. Would love to also see some clarity around the triangle and connectivity, but otherwise I'm really excited about this project. So
Great, Michael, and I do I think we're, you and I and Lynn has expressed support, Amelia's expressed support, but I think we all want to see a as you just said, a meta idea of what this area of Assembly ought to look like. And I think and I hope that we'll be getting a presentation on the Assembly Square neighborhood plan, hopefully in May, is kind of the preliminary talks that I was having with Sarah and Steve earlier based on the agendas that we've got coming up. So hopefully we can move forward with a plan as the planning board in a massive, district, sooner rather than later. So I'm looking forward to that too. Anybody else have any thoughts, questions, concerns about this? I'm looking at I've got to figure out how to do this screen because you guys are also very small to make it's getting difficult to be to recognize this. Okay, nobody else. All right. I think we're all fairly aligned on this application, such that I don't think we need to keep the written comment open. I think we can move forward with this application this evening. So we have major amendment to a previously issued master plan special permit. So, review of all of the considerations that were required to make under the zoning ordinance, and following review by the applicant and the conditions outlined by staff in the memorandum. I move to approve with the conditions outlined in the staff memorandum and amended by discussion by the board this evening. Approval of 120 Middlesex Avenue, seconded by Amelia. Steve, can I please have a roll call? Nope. Sarah?
I'm
what's that?
sorry to add in. I just realized that oh, no, I found it. I apologize. I wasn't seeing the condition for the mobility management plan, but it is in there. Thank you.
It is,
Sorry.
and the motion is to approve with the conditions as amended.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a client that has had sleepless nights, so I just want to make sure there is the one condition. There is the one condition that we can't agree to. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that.
Is that the parking condition?
Correct. And then there's one major amendment, but as I said at the beginning, there's 3 components to it, but yes.
Yes. The as amended is giving you the 5 some odd that you proposed.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Seconded by Amelia. Steve, can I ask you to please call the roll?
Sure. Lynn Richards,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
and Michael Capuano.
Aye. Have a unanimous vote. Congratulations. Good luck.
Thank you.
It is.
Thank you very much to the board, and Sarah, thank you very much.
Yeah, it is 8:12 p.m. We've been now going for 2 hours and 12 minutes. I think the planning board deserves a brief recess to be able to reset. So I'm going to call we'll call a 10-minute recess.
Mike, just before you do the recess, just a heads up that I might need to be off for more than 10 minutes. I'm juggling some childcare stuff. So
yep.
Just for folks know, I will reappear in 20 minutes or something, but don't wait for me because I know we do have quorum otherwise.
We do. And I intend to at least hear a presentation on Middlesex Avenue and take some testimony. We may not get to substantive discussion. And of course, you'll be able to review the recording before we take these guys up and the next time we take them up.
Appreciate it.
Okay, the planning board's going to be in recess until 8:25. We have the number of members we will have until Luke is able to rejoin. Do we have staff?
Yes, Steve Carey with PPZ is here. I'm
Great.
not sure if Sarah Lewis is back, but that's okay.
Perfect. At 8:26 p.m., the planning board is back on the record, and I'd like to ask applicant and team for 33 Mystic Avenue to be unmuted, have their screens shared if they want to do that, and make a presentation on their application, please.
This is Steve Carey. I've just promoted Pablo Picker and Paul Miller. Pablo, if there's anyone else from your team that I should promote, let me know.
Good evening. Steve, can you promote Shauna if you see her?
Sure. I see Shauna Gillies Smith.
Correct.
Okay.
Great. Can we get started?
Yes, please. I don't know if
Okay, great.
anybody needs to share a screen or whatnot, but I think you all have
Yeah.
the capacity to do so if you need to.
Okay, great. Yeah, Paul Miller from Neighbor Architects will be sharing the screen. I just wanted to give a very, very quick introduction. My name is Pablo Picker. I am the owner of 33 Mystic Ave. Bought the building in 2017. 2020 was part of the master plan, relook at with Dover Cole of that area, and that was an exciting thing to be a part of. And from there, had worked with staff in various forms, finally reaching the point with Sarah and Andrew to come up with something that we are excited to present tonight, something that seems to align with the city's goals for this area. We're very excited to be a part of, leading the way in what to us is an exciting new part of the city. So it's been a long road. So it's nice to be here tonight and to present. I'm going to pass it off to Paul, who's going to walk us through the plans.
Thanks, Pablo, and thanks to the board for having us tonight. I'll just echo Pablo's sentiment. We're really pleased to be here. Really happy with the proposed development and looking forward to sharing it with you and getting your feedback. And hopefully working our way towards an approval. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Okay, I'm just going to ask you to please introduce yourself for the record as well.
Of course, thank you. Paul Miller, Principal of Neighbor Architects. And we also have Shauna Gillis Smith with us. She's the landscape architect and principal of ground. Okay. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Yes, okay, great. So just a quick overview of the presentation. I'm going to start by introducing the context of the proposed development. We'll go through the building and urban and landscape design, and then happy to take any questions, of course. So starting with a map here showing proximity to transit services and amenities. 33 Mystic Avenue is highlighted in pink at the center of the map. It's about 3/8 of a mile away from the Assembly Square Orange Line station and a little less than that to Sullivan Square. Close proximity to many bus lines, walking distance to a grocery store, parks, and all the other amenities that Assembly Square offers. This is a photo looking north along Mystic Avenue. When we started this project, we realized that there would be several different kinds of contexts that we would have to address. So here you can see this Mystic Avenue is the surface road for the raised I-93 highway. To the left, you can see Assembly Square, kind of the development happening there at the back of the photo in the center, and then our site, this existing two-story building here at the right side of the screen. And of course, there's the context of the raised highway to consider. In fact, most people will actually experience this building in a car going quickly past it. And so, although we've been very focused on creating a a place here. We want to keep in mind that it is going to serve as sort of a visual, icon gateway into Assembly Square from the south, as the point develops. And it's interesting as a counterpoint to the project we just looked at, being a sort of visual gateway at the north side of Assembly Square. And then there's the development context to consider along Mystic Avenue, just north of our site. Assembly Square Gateway is a proposed mixed-use development in the current Home Depot parcel just south of the site. On the Boston side, Mystic Avenue is an approved 22-floor mixed-use building. And then we're also really happy to see the redevelopment of the Mystic Avenue Bridge into a multimodal transit corridor with a dedicated bus lane and bike lanes. And then there's the planning context of our part of Assembly Square that we're working in, identified as Assembly Point in the neighborhood plan. And the plan marks Assembly Point as an area where smaller parcels should be prioritized and developed into unique mixed-use buildings. And those smaller parcels sort of in contrast to the larger projects that are happening elsewhere in Assembly Square. This is a photo looking south on North Union Street. Another kind of context for us to consider here. It's sort of industrial, it has the human scale of the cobblestone street. So it's an interesting contrast to what's going on at Mystic, along Mystic Avenue. And yeah, so we're excited to be working here to kind of go first in the redevelopment of the point and set the tone architecturally, urbanistically, with a forward-looking and kind of high-quality architectural and urban and landscape design. We started the design process really thinking about the ground floor and the streetscape. It was really important to us to create an active streetscape and develop a sense of place here, kind of anchor the corner as you turn into this Assembly Point neighborhood. So we are kind of creating and expanding a sidewalk on North Union Street, creating a generous planting and seating area that Shauna from Ground is going to talk about in a little bit, and then lining both North Union Street and Mystic Avenue with street trees. We're also proposing a ground floor commercial space that wraps the corner from North Union onto Mystic Avenue. And you also see on the ground floor here, there's the residential lobby and bike room. Above, we're proposing 5 floors of residential apartments in a mix of sizes, studios, 1-bedrooms, and 2-bedrooms. The building is clad in an iron spot brick. It's soldier course. And the curving geometry of the site works its way into the window and facade composition. Each unit has a private balcony, and they also share a roof deck, which Shauna is also going to get into in her part of the presentation. The building steps to connect to its context, including the neighboring 29 Mystic Avenue, which you can see here on the right side of the screen. And the stair towers are clad in a contrasting light colored brick to create visual interest on the facade and also create a relationship with the building interior. This is a view looking south on North Union Street. And an enlarged view of the North Union streetscape. Here you can see the proposed planters, street trees, and into that ground floor commercial space. This is a view on the North Union sidewalk. You can see the entrance off from the sidewalk into the building. This is a recessed entrance both for to access the residential lobby and the commercial space. And this is a view of an enlarged view of the Mystic Avenue ground level elevation. I'm going to hand it over to Shauna for a few slides here to talk about the landscape design.
Good evening, everyone. It is very exciting to be here, and we thank you for all of your work tonight and other evenings. So, as Paul mentioned, the landscape is an important part of this project. We're setting the tone for North Union Street and really trying to carry a different tone, but still a very responsive green tone along on Mystic. So on both sides, we're keeping at least 6 foot clear of pedestrian walkway. And on Mystic, we have the bicycle racks as well as street trees, and wrapping the corner a little bit more expanded planting area with sitting inserted into planter beds using native species of a range of rudbeckias that bloom at different times, as well as sumac that has, nice fall color as well as a good good green presence. Because of the overhead wires, we're looking at a smaller street tree, such as a paperbark maple or a trident or emmer maple. And so the idea is both to welcome people in, to give a place of to sit and pause, but also recognize the character of Mystic Avenue and respond to that appropriately. And then next slide, please. And as Paul mentioned, we also have a shared roofscape that is shared between all of the units. And while the zoning does not require us to meet the green score in this area, it was recommended to us by staff that we do meet the green score. And since we already were planning to have an inhabited amenity roof on the upper floor, we are planting it sufficient to meet the green score of an MR6 district, the target score of an MR6 district, using native species and a range of pollinators in this planted area, as well as having outdoor amenity space for the residents to share. And next slide. So this is, you can't read anything, but you can see the calculations of the green score where, we're at 2.48. The target score for the MR6 district is 2.5. And the next slide, I'm trying to go through this quickly because to be respectful of the amount of time everyone's put in this evening. This gives you a sense of the type of thing we're thinking of. Most of these slides are imagining what the upper level roofscape would be, with a lot of the planting kind of being lower scale, but really a range of species over the seasons. And then the top left image is an image of the particular furniture, not the loose chairs, but the particular fixed furniture that we're showing on the streetscape, and how the planting is incorporated in this. This is a project in Newton, in Newtonville. And then we also are recognizing and appreciating and applauding the proposed potential improvements of bicycle infrastructure along Mystic Avenue, and how that would be kind of seamlessly incorporated within the project. And our bicycle racks along the street sort of matching the edge of the bike lanes. And
anything else?
Paul? Nope. I was
Okay,
just
great. Just didn't want to cut you off. So I'll just kind of wrap it up here. We believe that we've created a forward-looking development proposal for this site, one that reflects the goals of the Assembly Square Plan, as well as Summer Vision, the city's comprehensive plan, and that it anticipates an emerging, vibrant, mixed-use neighborhood. And we wanted to show the building in the development context again here, as we see it as part of a kind of larger project in enhancing this part of the city. And we're looking forward to being an important part of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm going to reserve any comments or questions until after we take some testimony, kind of time permitting. I don't know if any of my fellow board members have anything to raise right now, or if we can go to testimony. Okay. What I'd like to do is open up public hearing for testimony for anybody that wants to speak in support of the application. If you could please raise your hand, I'll call on you in order that I see you. Anybody wants to speak in support? Going once. I see Tori. Oh, I saw Tori. Yes, I still see you. Yes.
I unmuted myself.
Okay, I can hear you, Tori. Great.
Shauna, you read my mind. Whoever switched the slides. I guess you know, concern again here is what I would like for us to do collectively as a city, as a community, is to decide, like, when we say, oh, this green space, this civic space is too close to the highway, so we're going to do a payment in lieu. Oh, but this space that's right next door, we're going to make a city park out of it. Like, I feel we are inconsistent with our decision making with civic spaces, proximity, you know, proximal to the highway. And so this sort of area, which is called the Barrow, right next to 93, low buildings. This is intended to be a high traffic area, you know, with creativity and arts and funky buildings. And so if we're okay with this area being so low and having it so close to the highway and having it be intended to be well occupied, then let's just make that decision that we no longer excuse other places by saying, oh, it's, you know, particulate matter, and then being like, well, okay, it's okay right here because we have a plan for it. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. I know this is not you guys' decision. Just if I can quickly for the applicant, thank you. Shauna, we just came out with the Somerville Pollinator Action Plan. My request for all landscapers right now is just to hit March through October, have something blooming at every time. We have some great, you know, cards, very, very visual. I think you'll like them. I don't know if you've read it. So please just hit every bloom time. I'm begging for more willows, pussy willows. I understand, you know, that paper bark maple, choosing it for height. It is a non-native, and if just quick, our native plants, especially our trees, they're meadows in the sky. Native trees provide a place for our moths and butterflies to reproduce. Our moths and butterflies, they're babies, they're caterpillars, and that's what feeds our birds. Our non-native species do not host our Lepidoptera to the extent, or even any, that our native species do. So that's my request. I'm thinking pagoda dogwood. I know we have tons of serviceberry everywhere. We are looking for a native, that unicorn, again, that sort of like 25-foot native tree that's going to be that street tree. So Shauna,
yeah,
Oscar, I don't know if so those are my requests. Yeah, I think this is a good start to sort of creating this barrow, and then let's get some screening on the stinking highway if we're going to be building this active space here. That's all I got for now. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Shauna.
And thank you very much, Tori. I have seen
Shauna, I'm
yes.
gonna stop
Oh,
you.
I can't respond. Okay,
This is
sorry.
nope. This is not question and answer time. This is testimony. But thank you very much, Tori, for your testimony. I'm gonna take Wig now because I see Wig's hand as well. So if you could just once again introduce yourself for the record.
This is Steve Carey, PPZ. Wig, you've been unmuted on our end. I believe you just have to unmute on your end.
Thank you. I'll start over. Wig Seymour, 13 Highland Avenue, been here about 40 years, although grandfather was born here in the 1890s. So I have similar, well, first I should say I have great confidence in Shauna as a landscape designer, and appreciate your picking her. Secondly, I have some similar concerns as Tori does. We've done a lot of research on ultrafine particles from highways. They have nothing to do with regional PM 2.5, which is regulated by EPA. Regional PM 2.5 is a regional pollutant. It's not a local pollutant. Ultrafines from large sources of transportation emissions are a very local pollutant. So what we found in Somerville specifically is very high cardiovascular inflammation in a majority of residents within 100 meters of I-93, and significantly high cardiovascular inflammation in residents 100 to 400 meters away from I-93. Indoors, these can be handled by MERV 16 or better filtration, which I think a lot of buildings have now kind of as a standard. You can go higher if you want, but MERV 16 is pretty good. It's got 6-inch filters. They don't clog very quickly because they're 6 inches. MERV 13 is pretty much worthless because the filters are too thin and they clog quickly. But you can have very clean air indoors with tight buildings, triple glazed windows, and that kind of filtration, which I think is standard today. And I'm sure you'll have great insulation, which is part of the same package. But I am concerned about the ultrafine particles outdoors. Now, look, if there's no traffic, it's Saturday evening and there's no traffic on I-93, it doesn't matter. Have a party on the roof deck. That's terrific. But if there's a fair amount of traffic, the predominant breeze is from the suburbs straight down 93 toward Boston. So what that means in Somerville is there's very high ultrafine particle elevation on both sides of the highway. If we get the whole fleet electrified, then we're going to start to worry mostly about metals and tire and brake wear and that kind of stuff, surface wear from the roadways. So I'll just leave it there. I'm confident you and the city can do a great job on the indoor stuff. And that's most important because it's where people spend most of their time. But you should be careful about the outdoor stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Blake.
One last thing. We have over 100 papers in the National Library of Medicine on this topic. We have 5 of the best doctorates. They're all tenured. One is on US EPA, KSAC, one of 5 people or 6 who will decide all future air pollution regulations. We have faculty at BU School of Public Health, Volpe National Transportation Center, Tufts Medical School. This is among the best research in the United States.
Thank you, Rick. Is there anybody else that wants to testify in support of the application? Okay. Going once, going twice, seeing none. I will close that portion of the public hearing and I will open it up to anybody that wants to testify in opposition to this application or otherwise express concern. Please raise your hand. Once I see, oh, I did see someone. Yep, Michael Abruzzi. Michael,
you've been unmuted on our end. You just have to unmute on your end. Michael, it does look like you're unmuted, but we cannot hear you.
I cannot hear you. Sometimes this happens. I'm going to give you another few seconds, and if we can't get you to connect, I will be leaving this open for written testimony. So if we can't get you to connect tonight. I encourage you to please write in. So let's see if we can hear you now. Okay. All right. I don't know if this is going to be able to occur with Michael here. There seems to be some sort of a technical issue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if anybody else wants to testify in opposition. Going once, going twice. Okay, I'm going to close that portion of the public hearing, and not just because of the technical issue that we just faced, but also generally. I'm going to leave the written comment period open to Friday. Is it Friday morning now, Steve?
We can have it be Friday at 9 a.m. That's
Yep,
correct. So
Friday-
that would be
Friday-
Friday the 11th.
The 11th at 9 a.m. and to planning@somervillema.gov. I'm sorry we had a technical issue with one person trying to testify. I don't love it when that happens, and I know they don't either. So
Just point of clarification. Just comments should be sent to planning board at.
we have our own email address now, the planning board at somervillema.gov. We had a special dispensation. Okay. So I'm going to ask if members of the planning board have any comments or questions of the applicant or of staff at this time. Okay. I have a few comments. One, generally to the applicant team, thank you very much. I think it was a really great presentation. I'm surprised. I like the way this building looks. Usually I am not Mr. more modern architecture, but this is, I think, well done. I will note that I appreciated when you zoomed in on the building. It didn't just look like concrete, which I was afraid of it looking like concrete. As like I lived in a dorm that was concrete that looked like that, and God, I would not welcome anybody doing that. But it looks very nice. And the depth of the windows, which is a silly thing to say. I think too many projects have these really shallow windows that the entire facade just looks flat and boring, and all these buildings look the same and kind of stink, and I don't think yours does at all. So I want to thank you for that. I love the green space that you've incorporated, but in regards to that, I'm really, really glad that we got to hear from Tori and from Wig on this, because I think they both raised some really good points that I was considering too. On Tori's aspect of it is we need, at some point, please, hopefully sooner rather than later, some comprehensive idea of why is it that we're proposing green space and roof decks and nice stuff right next to the highway for these guys, but the guys down the street who are also next to the highway are doing payment in lieu, and we're discouraging necessarily a lot of open space by the highway with other folks. Is it use of the building? Is it proximity to the highway? How are we coming up with some of these determinations? Because they do seem to be a little bit incongruous. That's part one. And part two, Wig's testimony brings me back to a project that I think it might have been 74 Middlesex, where the same consideration was going on. We had a big, huge meeting at, I think it might have been the East Somerville School, back when we were doing these things in person pre-COVID, and we had some experts testifying about what and Wig was one, and we brought others about what it takes to build residential next to a highway and the considerations to that. And so I'm really, really glad I got to hear from both of you because you raised some things that I was considering too and brought up stuff that I hadn't. Um, I'm generally very supportive of this application. I think you guys did a great job, and I think we need to really think in a holistic way about how we are developing things next to 93 going forward, particularly in this cute little Point neighborhood. Because it's cool, it's funky, it's designed to be, or going to be designed to be almost like a separate little neighborhood. I love I think we need to be thoughtful about what we're doing and why. And I see Sarah appeared, and I would love to hear from Sarah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can sort of explain a little bit of background on both of those issues. So as far as the fee in lieu for civic space, PSUF is no longer supportive of that at all. So that is not something that's going to happen again. The two projects that were approved as such were during a different period of our thinking on the fine particulate matter. Whereas since we have learned that, sort of civic spaces can be designed carefully to use the plant matter to some degree as filtration. And we are, the thinking is now that we are more in dire need of said open space than we are. And so it's just that those spaces that are proximate to the highway and that pollution might not be used for active activities where there would be heavy breathing, but it might be more of a pass-through space rather than a lingering. So that was one part of it. The regarding the air filtration, there have been a lot of conversations. The building that has the MERV 16 filters already in place and is already occupied is actually 290 Revolution, which is in assembly as part of the what's known as sort of the Biomed complex. And they did have, they weren't as close to the highway as this building, but I believe there's a different system being proposed for the mechanical in this building. So they won't have the through wall vents like a lot of the apartment buildings do. So if the intake is on the roof or on the rear of the building, it is considered not as much of an issue. But then as Wood pointed out, the MERV 16 filters are the top of the line and designed, but as they get into the sort of the details of this building for building permit, I think that's how we'll get more information.
Thanks, Sarah. That was really informative, as it always is from you. I see Lynn's hand. I'd like to.
Thank you.
From
Sarah,
her.
I really appreciated those comments. I was going to amplify what Wig said. Having worked for the US EPA for 15 years, I'm well aware of the studies that show an increased rates in asthma and cardiovascular disease in any kind of residential that is 100 yards from an arterial. And I'm sure that, 93 qualifies as arterial plus. So my question back to the development team would be understanding the increased health risks of people living here, what mitigation measures are being put into place? Because I feel as a planning board and as a city, because the research, as Wig pointed out, is quite evident. It's like, I love this building. I love that we're redeveloping this kind of spot here. There's so many things about it that are really good, but I don't think we want to, have, we certainly don't. we certainly don't want any kids living here and developing asthma, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what are the specific mitigation measures that they're going to put into place here? And I understand that it might be above and beyond the planning board, but I also think that this could set a precedent of additional redevelopment along 93, since there are a lot of properties that are primed for redevelopment, or adjacent to McGrath, again, another arterial. I was less concerned about this issue when we were talking about all the lab work, but this is residential versus business. So I just wanted to amplify Wig's comments and put a finer point on it.
Thank you. Anybody else want to raise anything before we continue this to another few weeks so we can take written testimony from probably both the person who was unable to connect tonight and anybody else? Yep, Amelia.
I just want to compliment the applicant. I feel like the last number of buildings we've seen that have been on smaller parcels have been trying to fit sort of too much stuff into the envelope of the building in a way that has really done the design a disservice. And I think this just feels incredibly appropriate and well designed for the proportions and the constraints of the site. And I really appreciate the thought that went into both the design of the building and I think how it will fit into its context.
Thanks. Anybody else at 9:02? Okay. Seeing no further discussion by the planning board at this time, but also recognizing that there might be some people who wanted to testify that didn't have an opportunity to, I am going to keep the written record open until Friday the 11th at 9 a.m. Planning board at somervillema.gov. With no further discussion, the chair moves to continue this agenda item to our April 17th meeting. Seconded by Amelia. Steve, can you please call the roll?
Lynn Richards,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Amelia Aboth,
Aye.
and Michael Capuano.
Aye. Okay, thank you all very much. See you in a few weeks.
Thank you, everyone. Have a
Good
great
night, everyone.
Anybody else have anything that would like to add for the good of the meeting before we adjourn?
Mr. Chair, could I just ask for clarification on what our expectations for the timeline of the next few meetings? I know that the Assembly neighborhood plan is one big item. They'll require a lot of prep. We have another joint hearing on the books. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to prep appropriately for them.
Yeah, so as you know, Amelia, and probably all of you, I have a standing meeting with Steve the day of our meetings, and Sarah was able to join us today, Dan, and we kind of talked about this issue as well. So the items that are left on our agenda right now are these folks on Mystic Ave and the guys on Harold Cohen, who have been open. They haven't had a chance to present yet. So I anticipate next week, 2 weeks at the 17th, right? We'll probably take these folks up first, presuming we don't get any testimony, that's going to make us reconsider taking them up again on the 17th. We will probably have a presentation by the guys at Harold Cohen if they're ready to go. The joint hearing will be the joint hearing. We'll see what time that gets out. And then on the 1st is the next meeting after that. My guess is we will take up, if there's any, we'll probably take up Harold Cohen. These folks again, if we haven't taken a vote on them yet, we'll have some recommendations to make to the land use committee following that joint hearing. I don't know what else is coming down the pike, so I'm kind of seeing we closed out a lot tonight. We do have more coming up, right? So that's why I'm thinking tentatively, Sarah, am I right? Tentatively, we're thinking like May 1 meeting for a presentation on the neighborhood plan.
Yes, correct.
Just because it's so comprehensive, you know, you're not, you know, I don't think you'll be ready to go on the 17th, even if we had time for you. So that's why I'm like, I want to give the neighborhood plan the, you know, respect and time and thought that it deserves, and don't want to, you know, cram it in at 9:30 at night on the 17th or something. So I think right now, Amelia, we're tentatively looking at May 1st, depending on how some of the other agenda items have gone. But I'd really like to get it in sometime in, because we also have another joint hearing at the end of May as well, I think. I don't know what the agenda items for that will be, but I tend to think they're more administrative. Steve, is that right?
That's correct. There's one citizen initiated petition that I imagine will generate more public comment. The other two zoning amendments are put forward by the administration. I don't anticipate either being particularly controversial.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the length of the joint hearing will really depend on that the citizen submitted petition.
Okay. Because I'm hoping to be able to get you, Sarah, to talk about the Assembly Neighborhood Plan in May. Kind of aiming tentatively for the 1st, but maybe for the 17th, depending on how crazy it is. And if we really go and get a little bit behind, we only have one meeting in June, which is the 5th. Because the other meeting that we would have normally had is actually Juneteenth. So it's a holiday, so we won't be meeting. So yeah, I think Amelia, I'm not really answering your question because I don't
I
think
just
we have
wanted to
answers
know
yet.
by when I needed to have all of my comments on the neighborhood plan, and you have answered that question. So thank you.
I think May-ish. Yeah, Mike.
I just want to make a quick suggestion or throw out the idea at least. I know there's been some discussion about, you know, perhaps having either special planning board meetings in person or a planning board meeting in person in the future. And I wanted to suggest that maybe this neighborhood plan discussion could be a good opportunity to have an in-person meeting if the board was interested in doing that.
Well, I think it would probably have to be hybrid because I'm not in town on the 1st. Anyway, actually, or the 15th. I'll both be taking those remotely. But yeah, I mean, we just did a hybrid land use committee meeting. We should probably figure out, you know, if we wanted to do a hybrid planning board meeting as well, because I don't know what the appetite is to require all members to be in person all the time. I know that would not necessarily work for me based on my schedule. It was always tough, and back when we were in person pre-COVID, I had to miss a lot of meetings because of work obligations and things like that anyway. So I think a hybrid meeting schedule will, if we can get there and figure out the logistics and how it should work, might be a good way to go.
Yeah, I misspoke. I meant to offer a hybrid solution. Yep. I also think not only for the benefit of the board engagement, but also the public. I think it's really helpful to have members of the public join remotely too. So
I have thought that public engagement and public access has been better with virtual. For the same reasons that sometimes it made it difficult for me to go to the board as a member too. It's like sometimes I'm not in town traveling for work. I'm running late at work, and you know, all sorts of things. You know, people have childcare issues. People want to eat. People, you know, it's life. So yeah, we can talk about doing something like that. I don't know the logistics because we as a board haven't done that. Land use committee did, so maybe we can get some insight on that, how that worked.
Certainly. Yeah, I think I think it went fine with land use committee. I would have liked to have had potentially a camera in the room for you guys participating remotely to be able to see the speakers in the room.
I agree. I did not like that when I was watching the video in prep for tonight.
Yeah.
It would have been nice to see the people who are speaking, or at least, you know,
Yeah.
see what's going on, right?
We did try to set that up. We got a little pushback, but that space isn't, I don't think, is the only space for that. We could potentially do it in the subcommittee room, which although if we were going, I guess it really depends on how much we, if we want in the hybrid format to have the public be able to participate in person, in which case the chambers would be the place for it.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but we also don't have to meet at City Hall.
Right.
We have held planning board meetings in my recollection. We've held planning board meetings in the East Somerville School. We've held planning board meetings in
Argenziano.
in the Argenziano, in the library, in the Somerville Public Library.
Yeah, I wonder, and maybe
there
Sarah,
are
you
there
would
are
know.
other public meeting spaces in the city that will be able to accommodate. Yeah, if we have,
Some of which we've permitted.
yeah, true, true. Like, is there meeting space in the West Somerville Library now? I think there is.
I wonder if there's a space.
There is, but it's not terribly large. So depending on what we are taking up, we would want to consider that.
Mm-hmm. No, I get it. I'm curious to see how many people will prefer to show up in person versus remote. At one point pre-COVID, I had started discussions about having roving planning board meetings. Every meeting would be in a different ward or a different neighborhood, to be able to facilitate participation from people, or let's have the planning board meeting in a public accessible space close to the biggest project that's going to be discussed that night. Maybe we can think about doing something like that going forward too, in hybrid capacities as well. So there's a lot of good things to think about, and ways to make us more accessible, more engaged and engaging. So anybody else? Okay. I am a bachelor this weekend. My wife's out of town. I have no idea what I'm going to do with myself right now. I got takeout ties. I guess that's it. And TV. So, all right. I'll see you guys all in a few weeks. At 9:13 p.m. The chair moves to adjourn, seconded by Amelia. Steve, can I have a roll call?
Or Lynn Richards,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Amelia Aba,
Aye.
and Michael Capuano.
Aye. Good night, everybody.
Thank
Stay out
you.
of trouble.
Thank you.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm on the couch. Bye.